Hey guys, Tony here from Triple Threat Mustang. We are here in Hamburger Heights, New Jersey today doing a brake job on my son's 2012 Saleen Mustang. Basically, we're doing what Saleen should have done with this car, which is upgrading to a big brake kit, but we're doing it on a budget. Let me show you the parts real quick. I've attached photographs of everything, but here we go. So this is what comes on the car stock. I don't know if you can see it, but this is what came on this Saleen 302 stock. It's a shame. A car like this, they should have put real brakes on it, but here we go. We did one side already. Oh, here's the beast, by the way. Anyway, this is Gabe, our mechanic.
What's up?
This is AJ, he drives the Saleen.
Yes.
Gabe drives the Shelby GT500. And here we go. We got one side done already. This is the finished product. Again, this is a budget brake job. We got the calipers from Oreilly's and AutoZone. We got the rest of the stuff, the pads and the rotors from American Muscle. One side's complete. I'll let Gabe show you how he did it, and we're gonna do all four.
We'll talk about it on the other side as to what tools we need and what the general process is to change out the rotors, calipers, and pads.
All right. All right, guys, we're getting ready to do one side here. Gabe's getting ready to pull off the old. It's a shame that this car came with these brakes, but anyway, he's coming off with the old, and then we'll be on with the new.
All right, so we jacked up our car from a corner of the K-member here, and we removed the wheel. First thing you're gonna do is, this is a 12mm socket. You're gonna remove the two bolts that hold the caliper in place. This is nothing special. 3/8" drive ratchet and some good old Harbor Freight sockets. Let it hang off to the side there. We should actually put the hook on. AJ, pass me the hook that we have over there. That way we don't put any stress on the brake line at all while we're working here. Just somewhere hooked up there where it's not gonna do that and pull on our brake line. All right, next step is I have a 15mm here ratcheting wrench, also an Icon from Harbor Freight, and these are 15mm. What we're going to do is we're going to remove the caliper bracket. This is the bracket that holds the caliper. The new brakes that we're going to be using do not use this caliper bracket, so after we remove the caliper and we remove the bracket, we could just get them out of the way so we can work. I wouldn't say this is the easiest job to do, but I wouldn't say it's a hard job either. I'm no mechanic, I'm a backyard mechanic, probably have done brake jobs similar to this maybe 50, 60 times. And off comes caliper bracket with pads, and we're also just gonna pull our rotor right off. Sometimes these rotors right here where the studs are will have a little C-clip, or not a C-clip, but like a little spring-loaded washer clip. I don't know the actual name, but they'll have little clips here, or where this hole is, we'll have a Phillips head screw in there. You know, this one doesn't have anything. It's really not needed, none of the clips or the screw, because really when the wheel goes on, everything's getting pushed right up, back up against the hub. Pull that one off. And our next step is going to be to remove the caliper. Pass me that cardboard there so we don't get any brake fluid on the pavement. All right, the banjo bolt where the brake line is on the banjo is going to be a 13mm. Pass me the 13mm socket, the black one, the impact socket. All right, so I'm going to cheat a little bit here. This is not the tool for the job. It's just easier to break this seal and not struggle with it, since I didn't do it while the caliper was bolted to the car. You know, I'm not condoning this, so do it at your own risk, but I'm just using this to give it a little impact and get me started. And that's it. That's all I'm doing with the impact in that situation. I'm gonna go here to my 13mm, back to my ratchet, and then finish taking it that way. Make sure to have something down. Watch for getting this brake fluid on your paint. It's very corrosive. It will damage the paint, so you have to be careful. All right, a lot of times to get the old copper crush washers off, they get stuck to that bolt there. So what I'll do is I usually just kind of grip that little copper crush washer there while I'm turning the screw off.
These are the calipers from Oreilly's and AutoZone.
Whether they're an actual knockoff or these are made in the same factory remains a mystery. But they seem good enough, they seem good quality. We will be testing them out here shortly. All right, so when you do this, guys, make sure that you're putting your both copper crush washers on. Obviously the first one there to start the banjo bolt and the one directly behind it. These get crushed together and these are what makes the gasket, the seal, so you don't leak brake fluid. I like to just cinch it down, not fully tightening it yet, just cinch it down, stop that brake fluid from leaking all over the place. There we go.
These are new rotors, courtesy of American Muscle.
All right, you got to get the rotor on there first, obviously, before you get your caliper on. Get your stock. We're going to reuse the stock 15mm bolts that held the caliper bracket in place. That's what's going to be used now to bolt the caliper, because like I said before, this caliper doesn't use a bracket. It's a different system. It's one piece. Much easier to service too, by the way, which I'll show you when I put the brake pads in. Much less work. Changing brake pads in these is doesn't seem too difficult. I'm sure there's some type of a Ford spec in the manual as far as what the torque specs on this need to be. I'm gonna go with the good and tight. I've never had a problem with it before. Again, consult your Ford manual to what the actual torque specs are gonna be on these.
Looks better already, huh guys? Look at that. That's what this should have looked like from Saleen. Still have no idea why they don't do this.
Okay, now I grab my 10mm again. Now we're gonna tighten down the banjo bolt. Now with this one, you wanna be careful. You don't wanna go too tight. If you snap this bolt or cross thread it, it's gonna be a problem. So just nice and easy till the crush washers do their job. Crush them down a little bit while you tighten, and that's it.
And these are American Muscle Powerstop Extreme brake pad set. All
right, these come with a little packet of some silicone brake lubricant, just some grease. We're gonna put it's gonna be tough to see from that angle, but we're gonna put this on all the spots where the brake pads make contact, where there's any friction, where the tabs on the brake pads make contact. So it's gonna be here and here. And then also opposite of that on the top side, it's gonna be up here. And again, you don't need too much, just a little dab will do. A little bit up here. Okay, and then when you put the pads on, you also wanna put some grease on the back of the pads where the pistons make contact with the pads, just so everything seats evenly in there. So it's I like to just kind of like smear it around up there. You don't need too much, just enough for the pistons to not cause friction there, for everything to seat properly.
And if your kit didn't come with this, I've heard that you can use Chick-fil-A sauce. It does the same thing.
Don't take any advice from this guy. His wife will tell you he doesn't even own a screwdriver and has problems with the simple light bulb installation.
Chick-fil-A sauce gives you 10 extra horsepower.
Like I said before, this is a very simple way to service these calipers. You don't have to remove the caliper for pads. The pads are coming right from this side here. You slide them in like so. Looking at the curve here is going to match the curve of your rotor. So I'm just sliding it in there. We're doing the same for the other side. All right, brings us here to the pins. The pins are going to go in like so. The little black retaining clip is to the rear, and this little thing to the outboard of the car. So it's going to come in from the rear and come out this way. And now give it a couple taps with a hammer from the rear, and it should seat the pin. So our next step is this retaining clip. This is what's keeping our pads in there. So if you look at it, there's a little channel up here, and this is where our pins are gonna rest, right up here. So we're gonna slide this in, and you know you're doing it right if there's spring tension. If you flip it the other way, there is no tension, no good. This way, it needs to have spring tension to keep the pads under tension inside the caliper. So let's grease this one as well. Help us out when we're inserting it. Okay, so loop the spring clip on the bottom pin. You do one pin fully, and then I like to do the top one just because it's easier to get to. There's going to be spring pressure on the clip. Keep it down while you're pushing the pin in. Once the pin gets to where it's got to go, and just like we did to the bottom pin, a couple taps in the back to get the little clip that's on there, the little retaining clip on the pin to hold. Okay, that's that. We are in the home stretch here. Our next step now is going to be to bleed the brake system. So I'm going to explain it, and then we're going to cut the camera off because I need help from my cameraman over here to help us out. I have I don't know what diameter this is, but it's a very thin diameter hose that I'm sure any auto parts store will be able to get, that fits just tightly around our little nipple here, our bleeder screw. Right there, just like that. While somebody is inside the car pumping the brakes, I'm gonna have somebody go inside the car and pump the brakes. Pump, 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 pump. And then I'm gonna tell them to hold. They're gonna press on the brake pedal while maintaining pressure, not letting go of pressure. At that point, I'm gonna take a wrench and crack this open, and I'm gonna let the brake fluid go into there. You're gonna see air bubbles coming out of here, and the person inside the car is going to notice that the pedal is going to go right down to the floorboard. They need to maintain pressure in the floorboard until you crack it open, let the air out, close it. Then you could tell them to continue pumping and repeat the process. Eventually, the person inside the car is going to tell you, okay, the brake pedal feels really hard now, meaning we got the air out. These calipers are unique. It's got two bleeders, one here and one directly on the other side. So we're gonna bleed them both like we just did the other side before, and get all the air out of it and make sure we're good. Another side note here, while you're doing this, you have to take a look at your brake reservoir underneath the hood, because you cannot let it go too low. Once it gets to a certain point, once it hits that low mark, you want to be able to put more brake fluid in there. Now again, refer to your car's owner's manual, .3, .4, whatever it calls for, and double check and make sure which fluids can mix with other brake fluids. Like, is .3 compatible with .4? I don't remember right now. I've looked this up before, but I can't remember.
All right, guys, so we're continuing on with this brake job. We just bled the brake system. I just wanted to show you guys what the finished product is on the other side. You can see that we put Saleen decals on the calipers, and we also got new center caps. We got plain American Muscle center caps, and we had a custom-made Saleen decal for the center cap. And now that's the finished package, which is what, quite frankly, what it should have looked like coming from Saleen. I mean, for the price you pay for these cars over a stock GT, they could have done this. But anyway, yeah, that's the finished product. We'll show you on the other side how we do it. We're gonna do the same thing on the Boss. We're gonna put center caps on here that say Boss 302 on them, and yeah, it's gonna look cool. We're getting ready for the American Muscle Car Show coming up next week. Here's Gabe's bike again. This thing is sick. If you like motorcycling, this thing is all tricked out. All right, we are about to apply another 40 horsepower with this decal.
All right, so the brakes are all bled, everything worked out, and we're about to apply the caliper decal on the caliper here. Was it like this or like this? I forget.
Nope. Yeah,
like that?
There you go. Yeah.
All right. Okay, so this is a transfer decal. First thing we did was take some good old regular rubbing alcohol, and we wiped down our caliper with a clean rag. And that's our surface right there. Okay, I kind of just eyeballed it on the other side, and it came out pretty good. And that's what I'm doing here, kind of center it there. And that looks pretty damn good to me. And this is what Saleen should have done from the factory.
Looking good, looking good.
All right, guys, just because of the wheels that were purchased for this car, these weren't the original wheels. I think it's going to be a back spacing issue. where the wheel is just shy of clearing this big monster caliper. What we had to do is, and I know it's not the most ideal situation, but we're in the middle of this project, so we had to go to a local shop here and pick up some 5mm wheel spacers. We tried to go with 3mm at first, and it wasn't cutting it, so these seem to be like some lightweight aluminum wheel spacers. We'll use these for now. I don't know if the original wheels to the car would clear this caliper, but these aftermarket wheels that were purchased from American Muscle, which are Shelby GT500 replicas, the 1314 performance package wheels, do not clear it, and it's 5mm. So we were forced to use these for now, and maybe we'll reconvene and try to figure this out later with the original wheels. But for now, we're going to run these front spacers for these big calipers on those American Muscle aftermarket wheels. All right, and this is pretty basic. You don't want to buzz these on with the impact gun. I like to start them off so nothing gets cross-threaded. So start them off by hand, and obviously when you tighten them in a crisscross star pattern. These I actually do go by factory torque specs. The lugs on all these S197 Mustangs is 100 foot-pounds. I have the torque wrench there set, and we make sure that these are torqued properly. I once saw a wheel come off a car on the highway, and there was no other explanation other than the lug nuts not being tightened on there properly. So it left a memory in my head thinking about lug nuts. So I always really worry about the lug nuts and make sure they're always at factory torque specs. Once they're all seated by hand, I'll take the impact gun. Here's my 15mm for the impact. I'm not tightening them down with this to the spec. I'm just giving it a little buzz to make sure everything is seated. I'm not going all the way with it. See that right there? Just a little bit. Like I said before, we torque it down with a torque wrench to proper torque specs. There we go. Then just to make sure that our spacer did the trick and nothing's rubbing on the caliper, give it a little spin. The noise you're hearing there is the pads on the rotor. It's not the wheel on the caliper. No, everything looks good. Our spacing looks good. It's tight, guys. It's like 2mm, I would say, wheel from the caliper, but it's clearing. Nothing's touching. Everything's solidly mounted on there, so we're good. I'm gonna lower the car here. AJ's gonna torque these down for me at 100 pounds, like I said, crisscross pattern, and we'll get to working on the rear of the car. And all we're doing in the rear is pads and rotors. We're not changing the calipers on the rear.
Doing the backs now, just changing pads and rotors on the back.
The back bolts are 15mm to the caliper bracket, and the bolts holding the caliper are 13mm. Remove the caliper first, then the bracket, then you remove the rotor, put the new rotor back on, and then put the bracket back on.
Simple.
Alright, so here the rear calipers on the S197 is a piston that screws and unscrews as it comes out. So we need to use this specific caliper compression tool. I mean, I should get a wrench on this flat, but let me see if I could just get it by hand to get back in there. If not, we'll go retrieve a wrench. Oh, there it is, it's moving. You can see it here. It literally just screws clockwise back in, and that's how we are getting our caliper piston back in to make room for the fresh, thicker pads. When you guys open up the brake reservoir under the hood, and as I press here, the brake fluid should be going up. I don't want to spill any, so uncap the brake reservoir and take a look. their job. These calipers come with these 2 attached springs, and it's kind of like the same concept of what we saw in the front with the big clip, the big stainless steel clip. This has a built-in spring, so when this pad up here, these ends of the spring are pushed up against the caliper, this is the tension that keeps this pad in place up against the anti-rattle clips, so there's no crazy noises coming from your brakes. All right, guys, just like that. Like I said, some of these have clips that hold these in, or in the case of the fronts, there's usually a hole where a Phillips can go in there, but it doesn't matter. I mean, we see that this is moving here, but once the wheel is pushed up on here and everything is torqued properly, this rotor, I assure you, will be in the right spot and where it needs to be. And there it is. There's the cross-drilled. These are, what brand are these? Powerstops?
Yep.
Powerstops pads and Powerstop cross-drilled and slotted rotors. Looks very nice. This car is coming out really, really nice.